Hi, my name's Neil, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm also a Christian. We now continue with the second presentation of TikTok, Click Clack, having to do with belief systems and how they affect our sobriety. Sometimes we think our life is going to be operating like clockwork, but what happens is it doesn't. It clicks and clacks instead of ticking and talking. So we need to kind of find out why that happens, and there is a way to find out how it happens, but it's got to begin with understanding a little bit, first of all, about the fundamentals of various beliefs. Now, a belief system is a collection of individual impressions that make us individually unique from everyone else. When we come into the program, we often say to others that we think that we're unique. But we find out that we're not all that unique in several areas. First of all, we all understand that we can't drink successfully. We have common problems. We have common consequences. But the truth is, we actually are unique from everyone else. We go through our whole life developing beliefs in our belief system that are totally different from other people. Throughout our life, as we're growing, we are exposed to many different things that affect our beliefs. In our childhood, we have morals that are part of our culture. We're taught ethics. Later in life, we get into politics. We have interest in that. Religion, it affects us. The economy, difference between capitalism and communism, death and dying. There's so many things that affect our beliefs that it's hard to not realize that we are kind of unique because all of us get exposed in a different way. Even if we do have some common beliefs, we do not always see everything the same way. For example, do you see this bird bath on the right? Well, let me make it a little clearer for you. Can you see it in the box? There's a box. Give a background. And let's put the bird bath in there. Now you can see that this bird bath is like this bird bath. The difference is it's a little bit bigger. Now, some people may not see the bird bath, though. They may see something different. For example, they might see two people talking to each other. Can you see that? We can change how we see things sometimes if we understand that what we're really trying to do is to get to truth. This was a difficult one because there's really no right answer. Now, the thing about beliefs is that they do affect how we interact with it, with our different environments. We act in our personal relationships a certain way. We act in our job relationships a certain way, and it's our underlying beliefs that tell us how to do that. Beliefs themselves, we don't really usually think about. They're deep down in our subconscious. They're lying there and they're going to wait for something to activate it. A lot of things will trigger a particular belief. They only surface when we think about something, so it has to be something that we're focusing on, and these beliefs are going to be supporting that focus. It could be something from what's happening in front of us, where we're looking at what's going on right now, and seeing and hearing and reacting to it or responding to it, or it could be something from the past as we're sitting in our easy chair drinking a Coke and start to think about things that we may not like. That's not a good place to be sometimes, or it could be that we're thinking about things in the future, and our beliefs can actually affect how we see things, how we project things. So there's an awful lot to it. And the process itself, the idea that we have all these thoughts floating around in us all the time in our thinking, basically, and bringing up beliefs that we have, this process is always going on. Now, individual beliefs, they have formed in us from the day of our birth, and they continue developing and changing within us until we die. I often think about people who, as children, when they learn to cry over a diaper or a cry because they're hungry and they get somebody to take care of them, that when they finally figure out that sometimes they could cry and there's nothing wrong with them, but somebody comes and focuses on them, that's sort of an idea of beginning a belief that we can get people to do something for us, that whether we need it or not. It's kind of interesting how these beliefs form. They can develop from many different sources. For example, most of our individual life experiences are going to be developing beliefs. Beliefs are kind of a combination of logic, things we experience, or logic, things that we know about, and the emotions that they're created as a result of this experience. The heavier the emotion that goes on, the more intense the emotion, the deeper that belief is going to develop. Also, from knowledge, all those things that we've learned in school, they affect our beliefs. The things we learned from our parents and our teachers, from watching the behavior of others. You probably are aware of the fact that, if your father was a very angry person, for example, you might be an angry person yourself when you get older, as a result of you saw it in others and you saw it in your parents, your parental authorities, and thinking that it's normal when it may not be. So it's a major development when we start to realize that our beliefs really do have an awful lot to do with the way we behave. Now, our beliefs in general, they do contain our individual understanding of anything and everything, and they are still unique to us, what you may experience. I often think about looking at somebody that's driving down the freeway and somebody cuts them off, and that person may have the way of handling that, and they get very angry. They pound the steering wheel. They scream and yell, you SOB, and all that sort of thing. Totally different from somebody else. The incident's the same, but somebody who is not with these particular beliefs, they just simply don't even think about it. Somebody cut them off. Oh, they don't make a big deal out of it. What's the difference? It's their beliefs. Beliefs, of course, are going to play a huge role in how we view our own life, how we see our life, what is our perception of life. Some people can be very, very positive, and the environment has had a lot to do with that. Others can be very, very negative about their life. And again, the environment, the experiences they've had, the role models they may have had or not had, lots of different factors. Beliefs actually provide a structured process through which we look at everything in our life that's going on. It's sort of a filter. Everything that's happening around us, basically, we filter through our belief system. Now, beliefs are pretty solid. Once established, the very things are accepted as fact, and they are rarely subject to any scrutiny by us. We are, in other words, we're right. Our beliefs are right. And you ever see two people that are arguing about anything, and both sides think that they're right, and it can lead to a lot of difficult problems. Now, much like the operating system on a computer, our beliefs control how we sort and file every bit of input data. Our beliefs are responsible for every emotion we have. They're responsible for how we behave and how we deal with different situations. If you'll recall, in our first video, we talked about the fearful man and the critter, and it was about a story of a young boy who had been conditioned by his parents to be afraid of a vicious man-killing critter, as they described it, from a photograph, and was told that if you get around them, they can jump 3 or 5 foot high and tear your throat apart. And that's what happened to the young boy in that photograph. But it was later in life that the boy encountered what appeared to be a critter, and that raised quite a bit of fear in him, so he ran away. And in the process of running away, a man stopped him and asked him, "Why are you running?" And he told him about the critter being vicious and man-killing, and the man just laughed and said, "Well, that's not really true." It turned out that the critter was nothing more than a Yorkshire Terrier and had been caught in the pitcher close to the boy's neck. But in any event, the fear, we want to look at this because the fear itself that the young man had when he was running away from what he thought was a vicious critter, that fear was very, very real. He was acting on that belief. But the truth is that the belief that he was acting on was a lie. So he was reacting to a lie. And it's pretty important we understand this because we have an awful lot of lies in us. Now, we all have error in our beliefs. The sources of that error is found everywhere in the world. It comes at us from newspapers, from television. It comes to us through our peers, what people say, what people do, the things that we believe, the things that we don't believe. It's all forming various beliefs, which contain a lot of error. We also have our own ability to err as we form different judgments about our own experiences. We are often very wrong. And we are all affected to one degree or another from generational error. We may not like that, but a lot of us turn out to be just like our parents. So all error, regardless of the source of it, it's a thread that is interlaced and woven into our attitudes, our personality, and our behavior. And all of this is inserted into the foundation of our character. Our character is representative of the mental and moral qualities that are distinctive to us as an individual. And there are foundations of our character that we need to be aware of. So let's study a little bit about the foundations of character. What is it that drives our character in general? Here's a list that we can go down, and we're going to look at each one of these separately. But from our own experiences that we have develops character. Our knowledge that we gain through learning processes, basically, and the skills, things like skills that we learn, are going to basically display character. The type of character, habits. We could have good habits, bad habits. These are things that that we kind of describe about people, so that we, in terms of their character, qualities. A quality like steel's hard, sugar is sweet, right? But people have qualities too. We'll see some more about that. The values that we have, the values that we express to others. This is going to reflect our character. The morals, our own morals, the way, are we right and wrong? Do we do things the right way? Are we honest? Our morals make a big difference about the type of character we are. And then there's principles. The principles are the things that we act on. Basically, it's the things that make us do behavior, act on behavior, basically. And we're going to talk more about principles because we talk about these in the program, principles of the program. And then there's our perceived needs. We have needs, and they're very hard to describe sometimes, but our own perception of needs may not be what we really need. So we're going to look at that a little bit. And then there is the one that we talk about the most in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is something called character defects. What are they? Well, let's start with the experience. Experience is a lifetime recordings of events and situations that's down in our memory. We're sort of like a computer. Down in our memory of these events and situations that we've lived through. Things that we've done, things that we've seen, heard, felt, they're getting recorded as experience. And then there's knowledge, which we know is learned information, and we get that through study and experience as well. And then experience and knowledge both is our own range of understanding about anything and everything. So it's basically fundamentally our memory system, our belief system about things. So it's and all of these, both of these things, experience and knowledge, basically is going to reflect out as our character. Skills are things that we've developed over time, and most people understand what skills are. Riding a bicycle, driving a car, these are skills. They're something that we have practiced, and eventually, if we practice something long enough, we get much better at it. Well, the same thing applies to the program. We practice the principles of the program, and the more we practice them, the more skill we develop at staying sober. Habits are actions we repeat over and over again without thinking that originally appear to deliver benefit. They could be good or bad. The interesting thing about habits is that bad habits, they feel really good when you first start practicing them. It sort of pulls you in because it feels so good. And when you do it enough, basically, over time, it becomes a habit and you no longer think about it. But it's going to have the sad state of having long-term consequences that are bad. The opposite of that is good habits. They do not feel good when we start practicing them. But they, unlike the bad habits, in the long term, they're going to feel real good. Just the opposite, the two of these. The bad habits are easy to start. The short-term benefits are there, long-term consequences. The good habits, difficult to start, carry short-term pain, long-term benefits. It's too bad it isn't a little easier. We mentioned qualities earlier. It's a special characteristic or attribute about something, such as iron, for example, could say that they have the quality of hardness. And sugar is sweet, and that would be a quality. Similar to that, people also have qualities. And in this case, a quality with respect to a person is something distinct about them, a characteristic that's possessed by them that we would think of as a quality. Here are something, for example, of qualities that we can describe in a person where they would be positive, such as their quality of honesty, a positive mental attitude, patience, persistence, faith, common sense, loving, friendliness, integrity, humility, decisiveness, empathy, enthusiasm, confidence, discipline, loyal, very goal-oriented, hardworking, humorous, compassion, dedication, dependability, and listening skills. These are all good qualities. The qualities themselves are learned. They aren't something that we're born with. They are they are in a growth process from birth, so we're a baby, through childhood, through our educational years, to adulthood. We are constantly in a process of growing or not growing, depending on the environment. We already have the seeds of good qualities in us. They just need the right environment to grow in. And then there's values. Values are deep-seated, enduring beliefs. Uh, they they kind of reflect our life's goals and our modes of behavior. A value is something that we think highly of. Something that has value to us is going to be probably more a motivator in our life than things that are not of value. They kind of give us a measure of how important something is to us inside. Most people don't understand that values have an awful lot to do with our behavior. And morals kind of go with this. There are practices or teachings from religious, social, and cultural environments or growing up environments. We're taught morals. And we also observe a lot from television and movies and books, and that affects all these things, of course. It's also going to affect our morals. So by the time we arrive at the doors of AA, we probably need an overhauling. Now, we all have real needs such as shelter, nourishment, safety, and the like, but what we really get driven by are our perceived needs, such as wealth, sex, power, popularity. These are the things that mostly drive us. And what defines these perceived needs is our own underlying unique beliefs, all that have been conditioned by the beliefs found in society. And the norm in society is that these perceived needs will bring us the peace and serenity that we're actually wanting, but they don't. Another thing that affects our character, of course, is the principles that we follow. And principles are rules that we establish to meet our needs. We don't usually think about them, but they're there, and they're down in our belief systems. They define how we act in given situations. Am I supposed to be angry at this? Then I'll be angry at this. And I never think about that. It's just, bang, it's there. It just comes up. Anger in me, when I was first sober, it started for no reason, and it would well up into rage, and there wasn't a thing going on except my thinking, my underlying beliefs that were going on, triggered by something. But principles we have principles already. They just may not be good principles, because they do develop in us over time, and they start out in childhood, and like everything else, go through the years. And they can be good or bad, like everything else. Honesty, for example, is a very good principle. Dishonesty, that's a bad principle. Now, principles can also be very selective. For example, we may practice honesty in church and then a slight bit of dishonesty at work when we take something from work that we think we need. Would we really do that? Is that the same level of honesty in both situations? It's somewhat selective. Kind of depends on our motives, because our motives will qualify our principles. And I'll give you an example of that. If you look at the principle about money, for example, let me just give you a quick story. If you found a wallet full of money on the ground and you looked at it and you opened it up and it had a couple of $1,000s in there, and it had a picture of a little old lady in there who lived up in some other territory or country, and you had no clue who they were, and would you keep the money? Maybe, perhaps. Would you make a hard effort to find that person and give them their money back? How do you think about that? How do you feel about that? Well, and then think about what would happen if that same wallet had a picture of your mother's driver's license in there, and it was your mother's money. You would certainly think a little different about it. So your motives would be different, and that affects principles. The principles are very deep within our belief system. We don't usually think about them. They're always at work. They're always down there lurking. They tell us how to behave for given situations, and most of us are not even aware of them. They only surface to meet our perceived needs. The character defects, they define incorrect behavior. We know all about character defects in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We know that character defects destroy relationships. They harm us. They are caused by the lack of good principles, and principles are also basically coming from the underlying beliefs, things that we believe to be true. Some are, some are not. Now, we remove character defects by practicing and developing good principles to live by. That's how the program works. We practice these principles in all our affairs. So bad beliefs that we have is always going to result in bad behavior. The principles that are underlying that are bad. The beliefs themselves that are deeper further down are bad. They definitely are going to affect our behavior. They're not entirely always our fault. We come up through the years because people condition us to believe certain things, and from birth all the way up to the various moments that we're sitting here right now. And so our beliefs are always continually changing as we get new evidence and truth. But we do have a lot of bad beliefs that have come from our environment. There is the story I like to talk about, which is the story of the good tasting ham. The young woman just got married, and she and her husband are entertaining, and they called their family together, and so the young woman's mother and dad came, the grandma came to dinner, and they're all there early, and the young woman is going to cook a ham, and she starts to get it ready, and her mom says, now you know you need to cut the end of that ham off, and it makes the ham taste better. And the young woman said, well, Mom, who taught you that? And she says, well, my mom taught me that. And well, her mom was there, the grandma was there, so they went to the grandma and asked the same question, and the grandma said, well, Mom, my mother taught me that it tastes better when you cut the end of the ham off. Well, it just turns out that the great-grandmother was there as well, and the husband went to the great-grandmother and says, look, I got this story here about cutting the end of the ham off. Why did you cut the end of the ham off when you were cooking ham, and tell that story to your daughters? She says, well, she says, the truth is that I didn't have a pan that the ham would fit in, and I had to cut 3 inches off the end of it for it to fit. Now, things can get kind of distorted going down the road. So there are beliefs that we are responsible for. We may not be responsible for the formation of them, but what we are responsible for would be to have acceptance that we have some bad beliefs to begin with. How many people can accept the fact that I got error in me? It's not something we normally do. Our program helps us with that. And we also are responsible to have a willingness to change our belief system and the behavior that is driven from our beliefs. We got to be willing to go through a change process. And then we have to participate in that change process. Now, our Creator did not leave us helpless. We are created with the ability to help provide a solution for this dilemma we got. This dilemma is the fact that we have a lot of bad beliefs. But one of the things our Creator did is He gave us a thinker. Now, the thinker is that thing up on top of our head, or in our head, up there on top of our neck, basically. And everyone's got one, but we may not use it right. So we need to learn a little bit more about what our Creator has given us to properly live life without all these consequences. There's an easy way, if we can accept it, how all of these wonderful abilities that we have from our Creator, if we understand what they are, how they can help keep us sober with peace and serenity. Now, we often hear in meetings that our best thinking gets us to AA, and we sometimes tend to blame a lot of our difficulties on our thinking abilities, saying, I let my sponsor do my thinking for me because I don't do it well. And this is really a bit of a misbelief, because our problem lies not in our ability to think, because our abilities are there. It's found in the things we think about. And all of that is based upon, basically always, again, underlying beliefs. And the Bible tells us that God created us, and He does not make mistakes. So it's important. We're going to look at that in our next video about the qualities that we have, or the abilities of the human being, and how God created us to live life on spiritual terms. I encourage you to gift this book to yourself and to others who are wanting to know more about the biblical God. It's a fact that God understands and loves the alcoholic and desires for you to have a better understanding of Him. Be quick to explore the original source of the spiritual principles and their life-giving benefits that we find in the 12-step program. Eternal Sobriety operates as a non-profit. Both the Kindle version and the hardcore version is offered for purchase at the lowest price Amazon will allow. The Kindle version is only $2.99, and the reader is free for your phone, tablet, or computer from Amazon.